Aloha! Thank you for joining us here at truthmadeeasy.com as we continue with our Apologetics Made Easy video training course. Well, now that we have completed our study of the 5 points here, God exists, miracles are possible, the New Testament is a good history book, Jesus is God, and the Bible is the Word of God, we now have some bonus videos for you on Darwin's theory of evolution. This is the first of 2 videos, Part 1, Introduction and the First Life. In this video, we will look at creationism versus evolution, talk a little about the 2 main views of how the very first life got started here on planet Earth, and provide you with a snapshot, a big picture overview of Charles Darwin's theory of evolution and natural selection. Then in our next video, our second video, we'll look at some of the major weaknesses and flaws of Darwinism. You know, in the schools and in the media, we're told that the theory of evolution and natural selection is an absolute fact, that it provides the best answer to the question on the origin of life. Well, based on the evidence we've already examined in prior videos, this does not appear to be the case. But perhaps you still have some doubts about the existence of God and believe that evolution does provide the best answer for how living things came to be here on planet Earth. Well, in this and in the following video, we'll take a look at a few of the key concepts of Darwinistic evolution and let you decide for yourself. We've already provided good evidence in prior videos for the existence of God and His creating the universe and living things. And I believe that after honestly examining the evidence we'll cover in this and the following video, you will be convinced that it was God who created the plants and trees, fruits and vegetables, dogs and cats, the fish and birds, boys and girls, and the many other diverse and amazing life forms that exist today. Not only is there strong evidence for the existence of God and creationism, but as we'll see, the evidence for Darwinistic evolution is actually quite weak. There are many things that just don't add up when you study it closely. In fact, if you're like many who have taken a fresh look at evolution and what it teaches, not only will you be surprised at some of the problems with evolution, but you may find yourself wondering why so many people still believe in it. Darwinistic evolution and natural selection may have made more sense a century or so ago before all the advances we have seen in science, but with the new evidence we have today for DNA and the amazing complexity found in the simplest of living cells, evolutionary theory appears to lack good evidence that all living things can be traced back to the first life that spontaneously generated from non-living chemicals in a warm pond all by itself, when intelligent scientists today, with the most sophisticated technology ever known to mankind, still can't create life. It takes a lot of faith to believe that mindless matter created life when smart scientists can't even do it. Well, how did this belief in the theory of evolution become so popular? Well, it resulted in large part from this man, Charles Darwin's contribution to the theory of evolution and his famous book, The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. That was written back in 1859. Now, back around the time of the 1700s and 1800s, there was a trend among some in the culture who doubted the existence of God, miracles, and other things taught in the Bible. These people believed in and looked for natural explanations to the things occurring in the world. They were called naturalists or materialists. Today, there are many naturalists and materialists who believe that there is a natural explanation for the origin and existence of all living things. And those who believe that the living things arose by natural laws and believe in Darwin's theory of evolution are commonly called Darwinists. Now, many naturalists, materialists, and Darwinists do not believe in God, heaven, angels, man having a soul, or anything related to the supernatural world. They believe in only those things pertaining to the natural, material world, things composed of matter, things that can be seen, touched, and so on. Many naturalists and materialists were delighted with Darwin's work and his theory of evolution. For them, it strengthened their belief in a natural, material world and further eliminated the need for God. For you see, many naturalists and materialists do not believe that it was God who created the universe. Instead, they believe that the universe resulted from the Big Bang fireball explosion, which happened all by itself. God had no part in it. And from the debris and chaos from this explosion came the tremendous order and design we see in the universe and our natural world today. And then in a very warm pond on the very early Earth, the first life, a one-cell amoeba or something like it, spontaneously generated all by itself. And then from that simple one-cell animal came all the other forms of biological life. Simplified, everything came from nothing, life came from non-life. There was no intelligent guidance. There was no God involved in the process. And after the universe banged into existence, nature and natural laws went to work and did all the rest. While there are many people in the world who believe in God who created man, there are many Darwinists, naturalists, and materialists who believe that the concept of God is just a figment of man's imagination, that man created God. So who's right? Did God really create man, or did man create God? Well, in our many prior videos, we examined the evidence that proves, beyond a reasonable doubt, that God exists and that it was He who created man and all other things. We came to this conclusion using, among other things, the cosmological, teleological, and moral law arguments. As we studied these arguments and the evidence that's out there, using science, reason, and philosophy, we saw that God was indeed the beginner of the universe, the designer of the universe and life, and the moral lawgiver. With the Big Bang surge evidence developed by Norman Geisler and Frank Turek in the text we're using, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, the Big Bang surge evidence, together with the evidence we gathered from the cosmological argument, we determined, beyond a reasonable doubt, that God was the beginner who caused the universe to begin. We then looked at a number of anthropic constants that showed evidence that both the universe and Earth have been precisely designed in just the right way to provide just the right conditions to support life on planet Earth, much like the life-supporting conditions found in a space shuttle traveling through the deadly conditions of space. These anthropic constants here, along with the ones on our next slide, 11 of 122 known constants, well, these anthropic constants pointed to an intelligent designer, God, the grand designer, a supernatural being who made everything from nothing, who supernaturally created our time, space, material universe, and is himself timeless, immaterial, and non-spatial. An infinite being who is unimaginably powerful, supremely intelligent, and absolutely morally perfect. Genesis 1:1, the first verse in the Bible, says it all. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This belief that God is the creator of the universe and all living things is known as creationism. We also saw that God is the intelligent designer of living things. So we have two main views for the origin of life out there today, creationism and Darwinism. Assuming that one of these views is correct, which one is it? They can't both be right because they teach opposites. One view is right and the other view is wrong. Either the theory of evolution is right and creationism is wrong, or creationism is right and evolution is wrong. Either God and the Bible are wrong and Charles Darwin and the origin of species are right, or God and the Bible are right and Charles Darwin and the origin of species are wrong. Which is it? Are we to believe God or Charles Darwin? Well, let's take a look at what Darwinism teaches. Keep in mind that we're providing just a very simple snapshot look at the theory of evolution here. The text, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist, goes into much greater detail in Chapter 4, entitled Divine Design, and also in Chapter 5, The First Life, Natural Law or Divine Awe. Let's begin here by giving you a simple overview of the theory of evolution. First, Darwinists believed that all life forms descended from a common ancestor, what is known as the first life. It was a natural process with no intelligent guidance. These life forms then underwent slow, gradual changes over a long period of time, and a real key teaching is the survival of the fittest, where the strongest, quickest, and healthiest survived. The weaker, slower, and unhealthy did not. This is known as natural selection. Now, for me, I like to think of the theory of evolution as having two main parts, phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is the very first life, and phase 2 is all other life. Now, evolutionists teach that the very first life on planet Earth resulted from what they call spontaneous generation from non-living chemicals in a warm little pond somewhere on the very early Earth. Once there was no life, just dead chemicals in a pond, and then poof, there was life. Nature, natural laws, we're told, created this first life all by itself with no intelligent intervention. God was not involved. Now, for illustration purposes, we'll move all this over to the left side here and call this process of first life phase 1 of the first two phases. And from that simple one-cell creature came all other forms of biological life. By the way, you won't find this illustration in a science book. It's a mock-up that I kind of assembled together to represent the hypothetical evolutionary tree. Now, this hypothetical evolutionary tree falls in over here on the right, together with the ape to man progression, which I've labeled other life. So we have the process of first life on the left, labeled phase 1, and all other life on the right as phase 2. This, of course, is the theory of evolution and what is known as natural selection. Now, here is an obvious but very important point. If there's no phase 1 first life, there on the left, there's no phase 2 on the right. As Norman Geisler and Frank Turek point out, forget the Darwinist assertions about men descending from apes or birds evolving from reptiles. The supreme problem for Darwinists is not explaining how all life forms are related. The supreme problem for Darwinists is explaining the origin of the first life. Geisler and Turek are absolutely right. You can't have all these life forms evolving here on the right if you don't have pre-existing life to start with. So if there's no phase 1, if there's no first life, there's no phase 2. There's nothing. There is no evolutionary process. There are no birds from reptiles, no men descending from apes or anything else. We see now why phase 1, the first life, is so crucially important. And what evidence is there for this theory of first life? Well, there really is no hard evidence for it, just theories. And the theory is even more puzzling when you consider that life coming from non-life has never been observed. And it's even more improbable when one sees what's inside this so-called simple one-cell creature, a creature that's not so simple after all. As you recall from an earlier video, deep within the cells of living things, inside a cell's DNA, is a message, or what is known as specified complexity. When we previously talked about messages and looked at the different types of messages out there, we concluded that intelligence is needed to create a legible, meaningful text message. And the same goes for a Scrabble game message like mow the lawn, or a message scribbled in the sand like surfs up at Makapu. Same thing with the one-celled amoeba. When we learn that within it is the informational equivalent of 1,000 complete sets of encyclopedias, we naturally concluded that intelligence, some sort of being with a mind, must have created a message that long and that complex. And that makes sense, right? Text messages, Scrabble messages, sand messages, and amoeba messages all require intelligence. So logically, the first life, or the origin of the first life, would also require intelligence. After all, if simple 3- and 4-word messages like mow the lawn and surfs up at Makapu require intelligence, then surely a 1,000 encyclopedia set long message within the amoeba requires intelligence. Wouldn't you agree? But the evolutionist disagrees. They acknowledge that there is complex information in the cell, but then complain that an intelligent being had nothing to do with it. Instead, it's purely a product of natural laws at work. When asked how all that information got into the cell in the first place, well, some evolutions will respond, it happened as a result of time and chance. Just give natural laws billions of years to work, and it can do the job. Now, on this topic of chance, Norman Geisler and Frank Turek point out, Chance is a word that we use to describe mathematical possibilities. It has no power of its own. Chance is nothing. Using an illustration of a coin flip and what causes a coin to come up heads or tails, they add, if someone flips a fair coin, what's the chance that it will come up heads? 50%, we say? Yes, but what causes it to come up heads? Is it chance? No. The primary cause is an intelligent being who decided to flip the coin and apply so much force in doing so. Secondary causes, such as the physical forces of wind and gravity, also impact the result of the flip. If we knew all those variables, we could calculate how the flip would turn out beforehand. But since we don't know those variables, we use the word chance to cover our ignorance. How about time? What if natural laws are given billions and billions of years? Could it create the first life here on the left? Well, ask yourself this question. If a mountain of rock was subjected to wind, rain, erosion, and other natural laws for billions and billions of years, could natural laws, all by themselves, create the finely sculptured faces on Mount Rushmore? Of course not. No matter how much time you give natural laws, they could never create it. Only intelligence could create something like that. So are we to believe that the first life, with a content of 1,000 encyclopedia sets, created itself, all because natural laws had lots of time to work, when even intelligent scientists, today with super sophisticated intelligent equipment, can't do it? They may one day, but that would only prove the point that the creation of life from non-life requires intelligence, intelligent scientists. Here's another interesting thing about the first life. Did you know that it would take about 200 proteins for the first life to come into existence? Well, forget about the 200 proteins. Listen to the odds of just one protein being created by chance, all by itself. Norman Geisler and Frank Turek provide a comment from Michael Behe, who has said that the probability of getting one protein molecule, which has about 100 amino acids by chance, would be the same as a blindfolded man finding one marked grain of sand in the Sahara Desert 3 times in a row. And one protein molecule is not life. To get life, you would need about 200 of those protein molecules together. Geisler and Turek conclude by adding, that probability is virtually zero. Well, realizing the improbability of life coming from non-life, some have turned to other theories for the origin of first life. One such theory is panspermia, which claims that aliens deposited life here on Earth. Now, even if panspermia was true, and the evidence doesn't appear to support the theory, even if aliens did deposit life, we're still left with the question, where did the aliens come from? Who made them? Here's another thing to consider. Where did the water in the pond and the chemicals come from which the first life supposedly spontaneously generated? Some Darwinists will likely respond, it came from the material generated by the Big Bang fireball explosion. Okay, and where did the material come from contained within the Big Bang fireball explosion? Well, to this question, they have no answer other than it came from nowhere. So there is no real answer as to where the pond and chemicals came from, and no real credible explanation as to how life came from non-life. Only theories, like spontaneous generation. Well, with no real hard evidence for the first life, it has to be believed in by faith. As Norman Geisler and Frank Turek comment, spontaneous generation of life, which Darwinism requires to get the theory started, has never been observed. It is believed in by faith. And in light of the strong cosmological and teleological evidence that this is a theistic universe, and for many other reasons, the Darwinian belief in naturalism, or materialism, is also an article of faith. Hence, Darwinism is nothing more than a secular religion masquerading as science. Well, that'll do it for Phase 1. Not only are there some serious problems with the first life, but as we're going to see in our next video, there are many, many problems with Phase 2 as well. The theory of evolution and natural selection teaches that from that first life came all the other life forms here on planet Earth. This, we're told, happened as that one-celled creature, and the creatures that were to follow, underwent slow, successive, gradual changes over a long period of time. And that gave us the fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and eventually the ape and man. Not to mention the trees and plants, bats and snakes, mold and fungus, bugs and bacteria, well, all the other forms of biological life. Up ahead, we're going to look at 6 specific problems, 6 flaws of natural selection. We'll visit the Chihuahua and Great Dane. We'll talk about finches, reptiles and birds, and the tiny little molecular machines found inside the cells of our body. We'll also talk about fossil remains, skulls and skeletons, DNA, mice, apes and man, and other interesting things. That's all coming up next in the video, Darwin's Theory of Evolution, Part 2, Other Life Forms.